a Linux instance created. We should have a Windows instance created. We do have a Linux instance created. So if I go to services and if I go to EC2, where does it lead me? It leads me to the dashboard of EC2. It really talks about what you have currently. Okay, there is an extensive discussion on security group and key pairs, which is a part of your exam, and we'll talk about that. But beyond that, key pairs and securities groups, we don't see anything. And the reason I told you that it's wise not to have something running, because you might be charged on your cost. So whenever we need something, it's good that you get your ID, your credential, your login created on the Amazon Web Server. Each time you don't use an instance, I would prefer either you stop it or probably terminate it completely. Otherwise, you get to a point where you get to a cost. So today, we will start creating an instance for one of those Linux systems. You have this launch instance, which is available here. You can click on launch instance. It will give you a list of choices, whether it's Linux, whether it's Unix, whether it's Windows. It has all the variants possible. But for a learning perspective, we are very keen on things which are just free, right? So I probably select things here and gives you choices, only those things which are free with us. I really don't need to explain more things in detail, but the first one of the Linux instance that we are trying to create, we did speak to a lot about each and every category last time. But the interesting factor around that was the type factor. Of course, we will end up selecting the free tier option, but there are ones which are at large, small, micro, nano, depends on your environment and your complexity that your organization goes through. You will end up selecting. For now, I'm going to select the one which is free. And like what we did last time, there was some configuration that we run through. I quickly reiterate those options one more time. So many times you probably want to create 40 servers at the same time. Do you go through the same process all the time? No. You can probably increase the instance to 40, and you will still see that the 40 instances are created. Okay. There's a concept called auto scaling, and we did speak about the advantage that AWS provides. You have an option of expanding when required and shrinking when not required, and that option we have in AWS. What instance? And like we gave an example of when you go to a bar and you realize it's the happy hour, the prices of that will decrease. You have an option of pricing. Pricing is a very interesting factor of AWS. We can talk about this separately. Virtual private network is something that we spoke about. Subnets definitely is something that you can pick up. You can pick one of those availability zones around. If you have something very, very specific, anyone is fine, or something just closer to your area, you can pick that up. Okay. Auto assign, you can just keep it default setting, because most times AWS will probably work on the DHCP models, assign you an IP. Your DNS will remain constant, but your IP can change. Okay, so you can choose some of them. We spoke about the IAM role. Okay, identity access management, an important platform, a gateway to your security. But now, you're not selecting one, but yeah, this is one area that you will probably get into. Groups, profiles, privileges, encryptions. Those are things which will come around that. When you stop your instances, if you want that to terminate, you can select this one. If you want to kind of enable some level of monitoring. Today, when you look at the most environment, most organization, they spend a lot of money on monitoring. For example, to monitor tool called NPM to probably monitor their usage on databases, resources, and services. They'll have something on, let's say, SCOM, which is a Microsoft product, or there are many other products that we have. Similarly, AWS do have a provisioning that you don't have to acquire or procure any advanced tool. You can use CloudWatch, It's something that we will talk about it. This will come with a cost. We did speak about tenancy. At this point of shared tenancy. We took an example of an environment where you have an HR team, you have an IT team. You really have a common platform where you start sharing some services across all teams. You can either have shared tenancy or you say, no, I don't want to share my grounds. Then you can have dedicated ones. Okay, pretty much that is about it on the advanced section. If you have some scripts, for example, if you want to run some services on the startup, and if you have a code which is available here, that's something that you can probably write around advanced. I have not really changed much on the settings that you see on this page. And so we keep it as it is. We can go ahead and add a storage. Do you want to increase your storage? Oh, you can do that. Do you want to put 16? Yes, you can do that. I'm going to keep it to default. SSD will come with some level of cost. If you want to go ahead and put it magnetic, it's fine. You can reduce it. Encryption is not really available in the primary volume type, but if you want to add a volume and then pick something out there, you can definitely enable encryption. For now, I'm not going to touch this. It's okay. We're going to delete this on termination because we don't want your instance to be deleted and you still have the storage running. And mind you, this is not your S3 service. This is your EBS service, which means in the storage, which really, just a minute, okay? Yes, Karthik. Yes. Good evening, very good. Yes. On. Yeah, so I'm actually doing that AWS session. So maybe in 10-20 minutes, I finish it and I call you back. Is that okay? Yeah. Yeah, no problem. It's okay. We'll just call. No problem. I'll call you. So, right. So we wanted to add the volume. Are we all connected? Because everybody's gone so quieter.
Yes, yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Oh, Nandini is not there. That's why we were quiet. Okay, fine. So yeah, we could add tags, we said, and we did talk about add. When you said tags, it's about bifurcation, it's about categorization, it's about specification, it's about indication that you would want to put. I probably give departments, let's say support. That's one department. If you want to add another department, you could see another department. You can probably put if you have a layer that you want to create, that's fine. For now, we are creating a Linux virtual machine. So you see your SSH, the secure shell, by default, you see it over there. Okay, in Windows, you did see that it does talk about your TCP IP, HTTP, HTTPS. But that's fine. In Linux, you generally see this. If you want to add some rule there, like what we said, if you want to probably have rules on HTTP, fine, you can create that and keep it there. Or this is something that you can also customize. We leave it as it is, and we'll preview and launch. Now, we've selected the storage as magnetic and not SSD. If you want to connect with the magnetic, of course, it'll be a little slower. But if you choose not to select magnetic and go with SSD, it's a call that you take. Okay, so I'm saying next, fine, I launch it. You see a pair. Last time we did create a pair. And I want to select another pair that I've created. I don't need to go through the similar drill of creating a key. But again, yeah, it comes back to the concept of synchronized algorithm. And when we were learning CISSP, you remember those asymmetric synchronization and symmetric synchronization. When you talk about symmetric synchronization, you would need a public key and the private key. So this one will become a private key. Of course, it's confidential. You can't share this to anybody. If somebody has an access to this pair, he will get an access to this. So, but anyways, we've created one and we acknowledge this. We launched an instance. The whole process will have taken anywhere between years to a day for a normal environment, because they have to go through a lot more processes, a lot of forms, a lot of things that they would want to do. But in AWS, this becomes quite simple. In a matter of less than a minute, you are able to create a Linux box. If I go to EC2, you see there's none in the past, and now I see one instance being created. Most likely, this is almost up. See, it's already running. I want to give it a name, because when you have more than one server, it becomes very complex to distinguish. So I probably get a name so that we are able to understand that. We see this. Okay, we did the similar thing in the past for Windows. Now this is the Linux box. How do we connect to this? And before we go and connect to this, important factors are, like what I said, your DNS does not change, sure, but the IP address can change, because then we are working on the DHCP model. For now, yes, there is an IP which has been assigned to them, so it gets through. We do have a pair US that we have selected, right? If I go ahead and select this and connect, if you remember, for Windows, you have that RDM file, remote desktop utility, which gets downloaded. You take that, you decrypt with the password, you put the key, you are inside the machine, the instance is connected. Isn't it? For Linux, of course, you need utilities. So we will need two softwares. You guys have gone through and training through for Linux and Unix, you're aware. When we downloaded that file, key file, okay, and let's go there. And we're talking about the US file that we created. This one, it saves in a PEM file. Now, logically for Windows, you take an RDP access, you take your private key as US PEM, decrypt it, use the password, and then you are able to connect. But if you're trying to connect to a Linux box from Windows, then the PEM file will not work. A Linux box to the Linux server, it's still fine. It'll still work the PEM file. But if you have to connect from a Windows to Linux box, this PEM file needs to be connected to PPK file. How do we do that? You have another software, Partigen. Okay. You can load that key. So you need to convert that PEM file, which is the US PEM file. Okay, it says it's fine. We need to go ahead and run this whole format. We're okay with this, no problem. Logically, it's good to give a paraphrase, and you can confirm. So now we are just ignoring that. And you need to go ahead and save this private file. Are you going to save this with a paraphrase? Logically, you should have done. If you don't do it, okay, I'm saying fine. So rather than I selecting, we already have an EC2, which is a PEM, or we had a US file. This PEM, we need to change it to PPK and save it. I don't need to do it because I'm using the same key. But you need to save it so that you get into that PPK file. So what have we done? We've created an instance of a Linux. Because we are connecting from a Windows box to a Linux machine, the PEM file will not work. We need to convert the key into PPK file. We are taking the help of a Partigen software. You load this PEM file and convert this to PPK file, and you save this. Job's done. So I have a PPK file. Now, you want to connect to this server. You already have a key, which is converted into PPK file. What do we use? There are many other functions, but we'll use our classic putty, so you can put the IP address there. This is the server that we want to connect to. Remember, we need to connect the secure shell, which is nothing but your father of telnet. Telnet was unsecured. Secure shell get it encrypted so that you have encryption available at both server points. The information does not get disclosed. Once you have the IP address selected, you go to secure shell, select authorization. Now browse that PPK file. This is the file which we converted from a PEM to PPK. So we select that. Ideally, I can go back here. I can save my session and open it. Even if you are here and you still click on open, it will ask you for login credentials. The default login is EC2-user. If you get the right key, it will already says that it is working fine. By this time, we've already used the EC2 pair. We've also taken our private key. We've logged into the system. It's already a Linux box. For example, an ls, because we don't have any files, you don't see the list of files over there. If you want to go to your root file, you see this. It's already got into your root file. If you want to get yourself updated on the files, it'll run through it and all those packages will get installed. Do you want to run this? Yes, no, all up to you. But the fact that I'm trying to tell you that you've managed to go ahead and pick up, probably in last 5 minutes, what we've done is we've managed to go ahead and create an instance of Linux free version, possible configurations around the infrastructure was selected. We took the private key and converted this to a PPK file because we're going to connect to a Linux box from Windows. You log into the user, it works like a Linux box, and you see already it's functioning like a Linux box. That's simple, AWS. Why would not somebody adopt to a technology like that? Okay. Why is IBM today saying that I need to desegregate, decentralize, start a separate company only on cloud computing? Because I see this is the beauty of cloud computing, and that's the value that we are talking about. So between last class and this class, we managed to create an instance, virtual machines on Windows, on Linux, and that should see, and how fast, how convenient, how easy was that to do that? Are we good so far? I'm going to close this, or do you have any questions? Yes, no?
No, Raj.
Okay, so we know there will be a lot of questions in compute. There will be a lot of questions on the second topic, which is storage. We will touch storage today. We'll talk about that now. But yes, this is the topic that, and when you look at, and I'm going to go ahead and delete this even now. I don't want to wait because sometimes you can forget. So I go to this instance. I go to the instance state. I can stop it. If I want to go ahead and terminate, I can terminate this instance, which means at some point of time, this will disappear. The whole cycle is complete. There are many other factors. I spoke about elastic mean stop. You look at images that you will create. You'll create load balancers. You'll create keys around that. That's something at some point of time. But compute will have a lot of questions. The second area which has a lot of questions is storage. Let's look at that. Right. In AWS, there are many types of storages which are available. Let's look at some of them. The most common one, and where you have the dominating a lot of questions around that, is S3, simple storage services. And you don't speak files in the AWS, you're talking about objects. Object is something that you store. like your OneCloud, your Google Drive, as simple as that. It can be audio, media, video file, anything can get around that storage services. These are segregated, dedicated storage space, which is available on AWS. Next one is Glacier. Suppose you don't really want to use your data very recently. I mean, you can take an example of a bank statement. When I log into the bank, I am looking at the statement which is probably available for this month, last month, and maybe for the last year. I don't really generally need to go back 5 years down the line and see what happened in the past life. But when I have to go and find a file which is 5 years back, where does the bank server put it? They will either archive it. At some point of time, they will also have a retention policy. Most companies do have a retention policy. So let's say beyond 10 years, they will also delete those files, which means they will purge the file. Glacier is a storage space where you archive your file, where your data is not instantly available, but you can pull that data from that archival space. It will take time. That is why it's called a cold storage. The name itself says Glacier. Then you have CloudFront. We did speak about the concept called elasticity. You don't really have to, travel around the world to fetch your data. You can have some level of cache concept where your data, a replica of your data, is available to you close by. That is CloudFront. That EBS, that small little, plugin, or you can say the storage that gets plugged in with your virtual machines. Remember when we create those Windows instances, when we created those Linux version, there was a place where we had to select the storage size. That is where we got into elastic block storage. EBS is a part of that. Then there are many companies who have storage appliances, and that gets categorized under storage gateway. There is also a big utility, which is called Snow Family. When you want to do a migration, assuming that you're moving a lot of data locally to your cloud, you would need a utility, which is a part of your Snow Family. So Snow Family does take care of the migration of data from local on-prem to cloud. And then, yes, you do have the classic databases. They have their storage spaces. So this is where, when you talk about storage in AWS, this is pretty much it. You'll have a lot of questions around S3, Glacier, and EBS. But then the other ones, in terms of like you are a solution architect, tomorrow somebody comes in and says, listen, I want to go out and transfer all my data on premises to cloud. Do you have something which is utility, which is available there? Yes. Right. And then when you are a solution architect, you will recommend the solution. You want to go and recommend people that, yes, based on your needs, based on your requirement, based on your appropriateness, and those factors are basically the size. How big do you really need? Is it in GBs? Is it in terabytes? Do you really need something which needs to be quickly available, or can you wait? If you don't need something quickly available, you can go to the Glacier. And cost, everything comes with a cost. You look at factors like SSD, magnetic, all about it. So you'll have to, have a rational understanding, a comprehensive understanding of what storage services are, what is really appropriate in terms of size, performance, cost, and requirement to the organization. Pick one of the services that you see on the left-hand side and say, listen, this is what you need to have. And that will be the most logical thing for you. So that is why this exam is storage. So can you imagine how many questions will come around? And let's get into a lab again. Okay, this is terminated already. So it should disappear in a while. And today as well, we'll do a little more lab on the storage. So I think we're cruising quite well. We are trying to, in between last class and this class, we've understood two major concepts. And we're going to go ahead and understand something more on the cloud storage. So when you go to services, you see storage, you see a lot of things here. But the most important one is S3. EBS gets attached with your virtual machines that you create. your Glaciers, your storage gateway, the appliances that I speak about, the Snow family, everything is a part of it. Okay, but today we'll talk about S3, and probably in the next class we'll talk about EBS and Glacier. Something from compute it is remaining, something from storage it will remain. But today we are talking about simple storage service, that is why it is called S3. When you click on that, it leads to a page which comes to here. Always understand, on cloud, you don't have a logical file structure like a window does, isn't it? For your Windows, you can probably go to this folder, and you can go to this folder, and you can go to this folder, and all those things can come. But now it does not have a logical file structure, although it looks like, metaphorically, like a file structure. You can end up creating, but you know, that folder system, you have buckets. You have buckets in storage. So let's try to create one bucket. Okay. When you create a bucket, you need to give a name. First of all, it cannot be capital. It needs to be unique. When you click on this, it needs to be unique, absolutely unique across the entire ecosystem, not only to your organization, entire ecosystem. So like what I said, you don't have a logical file structure in AWS. It purely works on prefixes or delimiters. So we can use that concept. So you can name something like, okay, support. If you have support somewhere else used, it will not allow you to create that. If you don't, and it's wise to use delimiter, okay? So you can have probably endpoint. We say ENS. It doesn't support capital, so it's fine. I've given a name. We have a bucket name, which is there. You can select a region, anyone. I'll probably choose something which is close by. I'm going to select Mumbai. If you have an existing bucket already, you can select that bucket. If you don't, fine, you can go on next. A very important concept of storage is versioning. Okay, and we'll probably look at a view of versioning, but yes, when you save a file, version number 1, when you change something on the file, version number 2, when you update another file, version number 3, there has to be enough provisioning. Go ahead and save and keep all the versions of the files that you have. You can keep versioning. If you don't want to give versioning here, is okay. You can probably have options to select once this is created also. If you want to have logs collected, and like the way you have tags there, you can also have the metadata just to understand this a little more.
Raj, is versioning is something related to, something compared to hash, what you can say, if there is anything modified within the file, so the hash keeps changing. So whenever you modify, so is that compared to this?
Absolutely similar, and we will practically see that very soon. Okay, you're right. Anything gets modified, edited on the file, you should be able to see what really happened to the file so that the integrity of the file remains intact. And what changes, we should be able to know that, right? So yes, you are right there. Okay, so we will go ahead and put something like CSG. Next, if you want to add some more, you can have, at times you have integrations using APIs. Okay, you can select that. You can have those encryptions alive, AES 256, but we'll have another place where we can go ahead and select that. If you want CloudWatch again to monitor, you can select that. I'm going to keep it as it is. We'll choose that letter. With regards to permission, for now, we are blocking everybody. At some point of time, you want to give people who can see, read, delete, probably with the help of ACL, access control list. And we'll look at now, for now, we have the thumb rule of security, block everything that comes in, right? We don't want to expose this to everybody. We just keep permissions here. We go next. You can review of what you've selected, versioning, tagging, everything else that you've selected, and you can create a bucket. That simple was to go ahead and create a bucket. There's nothing here. Now You see there's a bucket which is created. Okay, so you probably have a larger umbrella which is created. Okay, you can have a large umbrella which gets created. So this becomes your that bucket we are talking about. And within this bucket, you can put around the small little files that you have, you can put inside this. You can upload some files and put that inside as a part of it. Or rather, I'll probably not put it like this, I'll probably put a database. This becomes a bucket like this. And you can have small little files that can come inside this. All these things can come inside this. Okay, so we have created the larger cover, which is a bucket. This also needs to have some properties. There are properties at a bucket level, isn't it? And there are properties at the file level. Right? So for now, we are really working on the bucket level. There can be properties that I will have around at this level. Okay. And there are some properties that I'll have at the file level. So we've got this created. First, we are looking at properties of this as such. So this is where we have the bucket level. This is where we do have the file level. We can look at that. So yes, we are making rules and regular rules around the bucket level. If you look on this, on the right hand side, you probably have the list of things that you have selected. The other way is you can click on this folder and look at the tabs on the top. And like what I said, for now, we are looking at files which are at the top as this one, and we are creating properties around that. We will get to a point where we include some files and we'll have properties around this level too. Here, when you go to properties, we did not select versioning when we are actually running through the configuration wizard. If you actually remember the configuration wizard, you had choice to select everything around possible except the last three things, which is events, request RFA, and transfer acceleration. Beyond that, if you look at this, if you look at tags, we remember support, CSG, we created that. And all the others, we do have a choice to go ahead and create. So if you want to put some properties on that big bucket that you have created, either you can run through the wizard or let the wizard go by and you can come here. Like here, Praveen says, I think let's explore that versioning a little more. We will enable that versioning more. We save this. You see, suddenly there's a values here which is enabled. You look at the tag. There are two tags which are enabled there. If there is nothing, it will not show anything. Okay. For example, static website login. You look at this. You see, there's a path which is there. Tomorrow you want to host a website, a static website. Once you have and you want to put your HTML files and all those files that you have on the website around here, this link can be given to the end user and you should be able to select that file. But it's very complicated to remain something like that. So either you use this bucket for hosting a website, or sometimes you want to use this and probably get into DNS redirect where you can rename, keep it simple, and make it an easier, convenient way that people can access that website. For this class, we're not going to use that, so I'm not going to enable that. Yes, this is encryption. You have three choices by default. Either you have AES 256 encryption. We did talk about so many RSA and AES. There are many encryption that we really spoke about. This one is one of the strongest one. Okay, 256 bits encryption. AWS also has this similar version. Probably they're all same. Okay, AES and 256, And AWS KM is still the same thing, just that just about KM is nothing but key management system. So along with your encryption, you also have an extra overrun of managing your key. You could select AWS 256 and save it. For this class, we've enabled versioning. We've really understood a little bit of static website. We've got the encryption enabled. Tags, we've got it. Rest, fine, no big deal. While we were running through the wizard, we said, let's block everything for everybody. And when I want to give permission, I probably will deal with it on its properties. That's where this concept of permissions comes into picture. We blocked everything. And we said we will use the concept of ACL, access control list. And this will help me to define different levels of permission, which will be given to it. So you can select this. And if you want to modify some people to not have the read permissions, not have to write permissions, you can definitely select that. If you want to only give user with an email ID to raj@mcafee.com, you could do that. And what level of permission do you want to write, read, permissions, everything around that can be managed with the help of access control list. You do have the bucket policies. This is purely nothing but, in the past, you used to use a lot of JSON file. Right? You have the JavaScript object file, used to code a lot of things. These days, technology has become so convenient. You really don't need, but if you have a JSON file, which you want to put it here, it comes here. You can use the concept of policy generator, and you can run through the whole wizard using this JSON file and get this configured. And this is again for the dynamic web page, which is corpse, not really relevant these days. Most things are managed at access control level, and we are good with that. Apart from that, the management column, you can introduce life cycles. You say life cycles, let's look at one of the life cycle rule, and I probably give a rule that any file which gets created to this after 30 days, please archive. Something like that. Whether it applies to all the objects in the bucket, I said, okay, it'll apply to all the objects in the bucket. I'm creating a rule. But anything which gets added to it, please make sure, take this, put this file, and put it probably Glacier or something. So we're creating a rule. You can keep the current version or previous version, it's up to you. But importantly, because you are creating a rule, you are expecting a transition to happen. A file needs to move from one place, goes through a transition, and gets added to something else. So you click on add transition. And I said, maybe after, let's say 30 days, please go to Glacier. After 30 days, I'm going to put this to Glacier because I don't need everything to be at my live production servers. Something can go to Glacier for 30 days. I accepted. I said next. Okay. If you want to delete a file, let's have the a certain period of time, you want to delete this file, you can choose one of them. If not, leave it as it is. So you have a choice of selecting the expiration period. You review what you've done. You've given the name, it's a bucket. There are some transition to Glacier you've avoided. Do you want to create this bucket and the rule all possible? I said, yes, I think I look good. I look in command. I look in control. I'm the solution architect. I understand what is relevant to this bucket. I put this. You save this. So you have a lifecycle rule which is get created. You can look at replications, you can look at analytics, you can look at metrics, you can look at inventory. Those many factors can come around management. So the most important ones are the lifecycle, which is under management. Properties, you have few things around there where you can select versioning, specifically the encryption, specifically the tags. And under that, permissions. These are the most important one. If you have a JSON file, then yes, bucket policy, and you will need to play around with policy generator. So what have we got created? We got this guy created. The bucket is created. Within that, we also give a lot of properties. And we have created a lot of rules, a lot of permissions. Right? So my top layer is ready. I get to a point where I also have those files, and if I want some files also to be, permissions, it's time now that we have a big bucket here. I need to start adding some files. So let's go back. We have this bucket which is there. Let's go there and try uploading a file. So I'm going to pick any random file. You click on file. I circulate on daily basis your open cases file. I'll probably pick one of those files that we did today. I'm going to pick one of those insight file. The file is uploaded. Either you can directly upload, or if you want to go through some rules and configuration, you can click on next and say, now the primary owner of this file is I. If you want to add accounts, you can do that. If you want to grant permissions to other, you can do that. If not, you move next. Again, remember, when it comes to storage, it boils down to the cost, it boils down to requirement. The standard ones are generally the most expensive ones. You really have availability zones, no minimum requirement. The file is really available all the time. So of course, it'll be expensive. You look at Glacier, it can vary anywhere between minutes to hours. It can be there within 90 days, but it is applicable per GB fees. Okay, there is something called reduced redundancy, which means if it gets lost, it gets lost. Some data will get lost. And are you okay with that? Then fine, because you'll actually not end up paying this fees. Up to you to select what you really is appropriate, because you are the solution architect. You recommend that. For now, I'm going to keep it to standard. I go next. I probably are able to select whatever that I've selected, and I say upload. So that big bucket that we've created, we have a file, which is already added here. Which is that file? This file is added, right? Okay. Now, what I'll do, this is the file that we uploaded. I'm going to play around with this file. I'm going to delete two files right here. Two entries, open cases, deleted. It had around 69 entries. I deleted two, and I kept 67 only here. Okay. So what I'm going to do, this same file had 69 entries. I actually opened up. I removed two files. I'm going to select this. Okay. And I can go here and I can delete this file. Do you want to delete this file? Yeah, delete this file. Let it go. Gone. Okay. Now I'm going to upload the same file where we had 69 entries, but we removed it. Now there is 67 entries. Now I don't need to go through the whole drill of permission, properties, review. I'm going to upload it directly. The same file is uploaded, but this time minus 2 entries. If you look at this, a lot of things. It does give you a details of the files, the permissions, what encryption that you're using at this point of time. At this point of time, we do have a year's encryption, one grantee, because the guy who's actually has the complete authority over this file is just one guy. We didn't really give more people permissions around that. If you want to just copy this path, send it to people. If you want to send to one of your friends to access this file, you could do that. Or you could also use some of the permissions from here too. Like you want to download this file, you want to change the encryption, change the metadata, or you want to copy this, you want to move it to a different bucket, you can all do it from here. We spoke about a concept called versioning. We took a file, we uploaded it, then we deleted two entries. We deleted this file, re-uploaded the same file. So let's see how versioning works in your AWS. You see this option here, which is show, and gives you exact history of what really happened in the file. If I look at this file here, you see this is where I got created, that is where we deleted something, now there is a latest version on it. So there's no playing around with this versioning file. So I have a precise idea of what really happened with the file. The integrity of the file is intact. If there is a change to this file, it remains absolutely intact. And that's the beauty of using versioning. All this is managed with the big concept of AWS. Now, interestingly, we always start on time and finish absolutely on time. But today, when I go back and I look at the whole exercise, I look like we have a fair understanding of what services which we have for storages. We also practically created a bucket. We also, I'm going to delete this just to be on the safer side, and I confirm that, so that will go off in some time. I don't have buckets anymore, but we were able to create a bucket, play around with properties, get some encryptions, get some versioning, get some tags, get some permissions, access control list, bucket policy, policy generator. Then add objects into it, different files. We want to remove it, delete it, add it, modify it, and see how versioning works on the storage. This sums up in largely a triple S, which is S3 concept for Amazon, AWS. So when I look at the larger curriculum, while we know in storage, we do have the glaciers, we do have the appliances, we do have the snow family, we do have the glaciers, all those things, something that we'll talk about in some time. But if you understand S3 and you also understand EBS, because we were able to tag and attach to those virtual machines that we create for Windows or for Linux, you get to know helping that. But if I am the infrastructure guy and if I have complete control in the way my storage functions, that it's SAN or anything around the tools or monitoring or permissions or the scheduling that we'll have, or if I'm able to create the virtual servers and run it up at the same time, can you imagine the blessings that I have as an infrastructure guy? Because I'm able to run, deploy, configure, implement it in a quick minute of time and do the choices, which is really, really beneficial to the organization. And that gets us to the right reason why IBM also identifies the importance of cloud computing and why today they have a decentralized, separate wing on cloud computing. That wraps up today's session. Do you have any questions around this? In the process, we also did create the Linux virtual machine today, and you know how it worked around when you really opened up a Linux box. Questions? On an exam perspective, I think you should be good by 25% of the question. You should still be able to correlate and understand with the things that we covered in the last time and this time. So if you can go through the whole curriculum, of course, Associate Solution Architect, AWS is a certification that you can pursue. We will cover up more. So we're trying to see if every week we can have something or the other. At least in the next week, we can talk about Elastic Beanstalk and Glacier. But the primary big mammoth ones is EC2 and S3, storage and computing. We were able to cover up in last 2 classes. Questions, please. Yes? Anyone?
All good, Raj.
All good? Okay. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. And yeah, we managed to also comply to the time. So 1 hour from where we started, we managed to finish the curriculum. Thank you again. Go back to your shift and get me some CSATs.
Thank you, Raj.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Raj.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Raj, Nandini will do it, Raj.
Nandini, see, Nandini is a. Nandini has already given me commitment 20 CSAT. She will already give me.
For
Okay,
this
so
month, right?
don't see, no pointing things that Nandini, you'll have to leave her a space. Okay. Yes, Nandini, what are you saying?
Raj, I think 20 is only possible if Pranay can get that, Raj.
Pranay will get it. Pranay definitely will get it, but I'm pretty sure that you're also
Only
capable, right?
Pranay can get that. Raj.
No. Who says? You got around close to 15, 20 last quarter too. So number wise, yes, you can definitely get that many survey. Anyways, that's a different topic. But yeah, with regards to AWS, I think we're cruising quite well. So major topics in last two classes we finished, which was important. And yeah, that will kind of really, help us to move along what we really set out this journey for. Maybe what we could also do is touch the big topics first, like the way we touch S3 and EC2. On the other 5 zones, we also touch the big topics first. Then we come back to small little topics like load balancers on the keys and those AMIs, all those things that we can talk about when we get into that. But yeah, we've started on a journey. It looks to be okay, or maybe we'll see how do we want to cover that next time. Very well done. Thank you very much. And we'll probably have the session again next week. Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Bye for now. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Raj. Bedi.